What's up, guys? How are you? Welcome into a very special start to the Bostonian versus the Book. Dave Sherapan and Matt Peralta. We are live on our YouTube channel at Boston versus the Book and on Twitter at Boston versus the Book, or X, whatever you want to call it. Replayed on Sirius XM channel 159 and on Sports Grid every night. Dave, we have a guest to start the show. I think this is a first.
First time we've ever done this, but we had to make special arrangements because this guy's busy. He's here in Vegas doing big things. Nobody ever started in the big box, just for the record. All right, you're in the big box.
Yeah.
Brendan Fitzgerald.
That's awesome. Yeah, when it popped on, I figured something went wrong technically, but I guess that's how we'll go. I mean, no, great.
Right out of the gate, right to you, right to T-Mobile Arena for UFC 300. All right, Dave, set the scene here. Every morning, I drop off my daughter, and Brendan's dropping off his son. We cross paths like two ships in the night every single day. And I just quickly yell UFC things to him in passing. And I finally said to him, look, at some point you have to do the show. He's like, yeah, sure, whenever. I go, UFC 300, we're booking you for the show. And so bam, we're here. Brendan, how are you? Thank you for the time. Another Boston guy. Sorry, Dave. We got two on the show today.
Matt, it was so good to meet you a few months ago when you were like, who's going to headline 300? Now, a lot of people ask me if I get recognized. I'm like, almost never. Like, I get recognized at UFC host hotels because that's where the fans are. But when I'm out and about, I don't. But Matt did. And then we had a nice chat. Turns out we're both from the great state of Massachusetts. And here I am. Happy to join you guys.
Enough of that Boston stuff. You got a little bit of Pittsburgh ties too.
That's
we
the thing.
Just found that out, right?
Sometimes I have to turn in my Boston card because I've always had a soft spot and will always have a soft spot, especially for the Pittsburgh Penguins, because that was my first sports love was the Penguins and Mario Lemieux.
Yes.
And Jaromir Jagr. And I got to meet Jaromir Jagr last summer in Las Vegas, and it was one of the highlights of my life. And when his number was retired a couple months ago, it was like this, kind of full circle little boy moment for me. And I don't have the vitriol for some of the Pittsburgh teams like a lot of New Englanders.
Are the Penguins going to win today? Let's get this out of the way. They're hosting the Red Wings tonight. They're going to get this done. B. Fitz, right?
Yeah. So I'm a Bruins fan and I've become a big Golden Knights fan. My son's a Golden Knights fan. But fine. The first thing I told my son this morning when he was getting ready, I said, Penguins got a big game today, buddy. I said Penguins and the Red Wings, because that's the thing. I've been following the Penguins down the stretch. I'm like, I hope they get in. I feel bad for Sid playing this well to be left out of the playoffs, twice in a row potentially. So I'm rooting hard for him against the Wings.
Let's go.
Very cool. All right, let's get to the week. UFC 300. This has been, I know, a journey to get to this card, but just top to bottom, this card is ridiculous. I know the headline. Everybody was looking at it. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. But just overall, this is unbelievable what you guys are going to get to broadcast cover, talk about for the next couple of days. Is it not?
Yeah, it makes our job pretty easy. I guess the challenge is there's too many storylines that can fit neatly into a half-hour or hour-long show. And the other thing that I always feel bad about for some UFC fighters is like, the up-and-comers that are, fighting on the prelims that have standout performances. And by the end of the night, it's been trumped by whatever the big story is in the title fights and the main event, and that sort of thing. And so then I look at this card and I'm just like, what are we going to forget about at the end of the night that we shouldn't forget about that really kind of needs to be focused in on? Like Yuri Prohaska and Alexander Rakic is a monster fight. Like Dana White has said, we have 13 main events, and we do. And so it makes our job easier. Like anywhere you look on the card, I could talk for 5 minutes about each side of the matchup, which makes for great TV and makes for great excitement coming into a fight night that we have never experienced before. That's for sure.
All right, I'm going to hit you with this one then. How are you going to talk 5 minutes about the other side of Bo Nickel's fight? Bo Nickel, listen. This guy, Penn State guy, the line is minus 2,000. How in the hell is he? He can't lose his fight. This is on every single parlay from coast to coast, all wherever you could bet. Bo Nickel is in the parlay.
And I've heard Sharp say that too. Guys that obviously are, very aware that the way to get betting value is to not do parlays in general, and it's to tie up Bo Nickel in every parlay. Cody Brundage is a very nice guy. Like him a lot. He's got 2 kids. His wife is Amanda Bobby Cooper, former UFC fighter Amanda Brundage now. And so I'd talk 5 minutes about the great guy that Cody Brundage is. The test that he gets. I mean, think about it from Cody's perspective. Yes, Bo Nickal's the star. He's 5-0, all 5 of his wins, first round finishes. He's a future title challenger. It seems eventual. But, what a spotlight Cody gets to have, too. This is his 9th UFC appearance. A lot of people thought that he wouldn't be on the roster still. And he gets to fight at UFC 300 in the opening bout on the main card. That's pretty cool. And so I feel good for Cody about that. He's up against it. He knows it just as you and I know it. But, it's an experience, certainly, that he gets to have that a lot of fighters would kill to have.
Brendan, I was doing some prep on this, and I acted like I had to stop and go, wait a minute. The first fight of the night is Figueiredo Garbrandt. Like, we're going to have, like, people need to realize you got to get to your seat really early, get to your TV sets really early. You can't miss that fight. That fight's incredible to start the whole thing off.
Yeah, and if you're a Cody Garbrandt backer at this point, especially at this underdog price, it's a white knuckle ride because, the way that Cody fights, his best chance is to point fight, stay outside, in and out fight smart. The reason why he became a fan favorite and why he blitzed through everybody is because he fought recklessly oftentimes and would just put himself in harm's way to deliver big knockout shots. And when you're getting those knockouts, things can work out. But at this point in his career, it hasn't worked out for him to fight that style fight. And Figueiredo is that flyweight finisher that's now moving up. Second fight at bantamweight. He looked great against Rob Font last year. So it is a great fight. And there's actually 2 fights on the night out of the 13 that feature undisputed champions or former undisputed UFC champions. And it's the first fight, that one, and it's the last fight. Justin Gaethje was an interim champion. The other ones have one side of the matchup as a champ or a former champ, but there's 2 that have both sides, guys that have held that undisputed UFC gold, and that first one's one of them.
I was going to ask you next about the Gaethje Holloway fight because that line is sitting at about, I'm looking at like minus 160, minus 150. Feels like it could go either way. 4.5 is the total. The fight, just at first blush, feels like it's going to go to distance. Any thoughts about that fight, either side? Anything that we should look for, not necessarily from a betting viewpoint, but from what you just said about both these guys? Former champions.
Well, it's the people's main event. If you watch the UFC on a consistent basis, it's like this is probably the fight that most fans are looking most forward to. On a night full of stars and full of huge fights that won't miss in terms of the entertainment value, this is the one. And it's the BMF title. And I always describe Justin Gaethje to people like this, because I understand a lot of people tune in for the big fights and they could tell you who Conor McGregor is, but maybe they can't tell you who 10 UFC fighters are or 5 UFC fighters, right? And I just tell them this. I say, Justin Gaethje is not a household name. He should be a household name. Like, you will watch a Justin Gaethje fight, and that is the fighter that might pull you in to be a UFC fan for the rest of your life. That's how he fights. He is reckless in the best way possible. He knows what fight promoters like. He knows what fans like. Like, he gives these quotes. He's just like, I never plan on being alive on Sunday. We'll see how Saturday night goes. Like, he said that this week. It's crazy. But the thing is, when you fight like that, oftentimes you don't get a career out of it. You get injuries and you won't last long. And he's the guy who wins like that. And he's done so oftentimes. And he's just the best guy to watch you could ever want. And Max Holloway has never been finished. He's a skinny, tall guy that doesn't look like he should be one of the toughest guys on the planet, but he is. He's got great boxing, and the thing is that Gaethje isn't going to try to use his size to wrestle and hold him down. It's very much going to be a striking battle, and it's going to be, can Gaethje land enough power shots that do more damage than Max's precision? From a betting standpoint, I'd throw paint at a wall on this one. I'd throw a dart because, and I suck at darts. I really just I don't know. The 4.5 seems like I'd be white knuckling it for 22.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever put away Max. And we've seen Gaethje go the distance, but not often. And he has that power that has ended very tough fighters' nights early. So I know a lot of bettors that say, I'm going to sit back and enjoy this one. But I will say this, Justin Gaethje was minus 220 less than a week ago. And now he's like minus 170, 165. So there's sharp money coming in on the Max side.
Yeah, seen it too. A lot of people liking Max there on that. Let's talk about the ladies for a second. The Holly Holm fight against a newcomer to the UFC, but not a newcomer to fights. I mean, Kayla Harrison's been someone we wanted to see in the UFC for a long time. Dana White's spent a lot of time trying to get her to fight here, either out of the PFL or otherwise. A lot of talk about what happened in the earlier fights of the career of Holly Holmes, and the book coming out with Ronda Rousey saying she was concussed and that's why she lost that fight and that she's the best women's fighter of all time. I'm not sure I'm in any spot to say yes or no to that, but is it at all worrisome that we're talking about a fight that happened years ago when Holly Holmes got a really big challenge ahead of her coming up Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's worrisome. I don't really know. I think people have a tough time celebrating the legacy of Ronda Rousey, and then also trying to put in context how her career ended in the octagon with a couple of knockout losses, and then just kind of faded away. Like, we shouldn't do that. She was the person who brought women's mixed martial arts into the UFC and did so. I mean, if you talk about all-time UFC superstars, like Connor's one, Ronda might be two, and,
right.
and then Brock Lesnar's there, Chuck Liddell's there, but like Ronda's she's on the MMA, she's on the UFC Mount Rushmore in terms of superstars. She just is. But how her career ended, we kind of have to find the narrative to celebrate her legacy while not diminishing other fighters. I don't really know. I don't really care to massage it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Holly is known for often being the bigger, more physical fighter, and she's going to get tested in that department where she usually can control things. She can control range. Her boxing is, next level. She's a boxing Hall of Famer, but against a challenge like Kayla, who usually fights at 145 or north of that, competed in the Olympics in judo at 172 pounds.
Whew.
If she can make that weight on the scale, what does her body look like the next day? It's kind of like Alex Pereira when he was a middleweight. When you're a middleweight at 185 one day, but then you're fighting at 220 against a guy who was only able to put on 20 more pounds and get to 205, then that's still a huge difference. So I think that is the factor that puts Holly as the big underdog that she is. She won't be able to use her impressive stature and imposing physique and strength that she has been in the past to other fighters in that weight class. That's not going to exist. And then Kayla's coming in hungry, ready to prove a point. So we'll see.
The other co-main women's fight, right? Zhang, Yan. I don't even know.
Don't try.
And I mess up the
Yeah,
names.
you did a good job with that.
I listen. That's one of the hardest things you do. You got to know these names. You're a true talent. We had Anik on the show. I teased him. I'm like, you guys are so good at this. We had Olivia on. She was great with it.
Yeah.
This fight is minus 500.
Yeah.
Okay. It's 4.5. It screams to me dead under. It will not go that distance. That's just looking at it. But is this a slam dunk? Easy fight?
No, it's not. I think I just did our betting show yesterday on UFC Fight Pass and had Bo Sharp saying that Yan is a live underdog at that price. Her striking is very, very good. Yan is. The difference is she doesn't have any submission wins, and Zhang Weili is the more well-rounded fighter. But Weili is really she is visible to a lot of people. She's been on big fights. She's been in high-profile matchups. She's the first Chinese champion in UFC history. So, like, she's become, I wouldn't say superstar worldwide, but like she is a big fighting star. Fans know her. She has name value with anybody that watches mixed martial arts. Yan Xiaonan still does not have that. She's won big fights. She's had some great performances. She's finished. She has 8 knockouts in her career, but she does not register her name like Zhang Weili does. But Yan Xiaonan has some good experience. She was the first Chinese women's fighter in the UFC, came here before Zhang Weili. This is the first China versus China, matchup in UFC championship history. So this, for the other side of the world, this fight is huge on a global scale. This fight is big, especially with the inroads that UFC has been trying to make into China since 2017, basically. So it's big. The difference in line is that Zhang Weili, if it goes to the ground, if she can get it to the ground, she might be able to have a sizable advantage there. But Yan Xiaonan, I believe, passed the test against Mackenzie Dern and looked really, really good in that fight too. So if she can handle herself and keep it on the feet, she's live, according to many, at that price.
Fitzy, we mentioned 13 main events. Saruki and Oliveira. I mean, I kind of had to do a double take when I was going through the whole entire card. I was going, okay, Garbrandt's fighting on the first fight of the night. That makes no sense. It's incredible. Saruki, and I mean, this is a guy who maybe not is a household name, but is on his way to becoming that. And yet he's got an unbelievable opponent on the other side of the octagon, him. And Dubronk's going into, I don't know, a renaissance of his career, trying to rebuild to what he once was. How does that fight go down? Are we on the ground the entire time? Or are we going to stand up with two guys who are unbelievable?
Hold on. What happened?
Oh,
hold
I
on.
can answer the question, Dave. Should I go?
Go ahead.
I just go. There you go. Sometimes Matt does that.
Yeah. Where is this fight going to take place? I think was the gist of the question.
Yes.
I don't know. And the thing is, it doesn't matter, right? It's a great fight wherever it takes place because these guys are not. These guys are all out energy all the time. Active jujitsu, whether they're from the bottom or the top. So it's not going to be like, oh, it gets to the ground and they're going to try to hold each other down. These guys are very aggressive no matter the spot. Arman crossed a new barrier into the top 5 with his win over Beneil Dariush, in which he knocked him out, even though he's got standout wrestling. The sharps that I know believe this is the true arrival moment again for Arman. It takes another step up. He's a minus 200 or better favorite, and getting a lot of money at the window is Arman. I think it's tough to bet against Charles. More finishes in UFC history than anybody else. He was an underdog to Beneil Dariush, made pretty quick work of him in Vancouver last year. So I always would, again, I'm the type I'd hold my breath on betting against Charles Oliveira kind of anywhere, right? I thought Gaethje had him. I thought Poirier was going to have him, and I thought Chandler was going to get him, and he won all of those huge fights in his title run. And then he won as an underdog against Dariush after he came up short against Makhachev. Tough situation against Makhachev to go to Abu Dhabi and fight that title fight too. So Oliveira is still very much a fierce guy to deal with. But the sharp money is coming in, and it's coming in big on Sarukian. Like there are people out there I know that they are the most confident in Sarukian across the entire card, which says something. And they're smarter than me in this department. But man, if you watch the UFC the last few years, and you're going to sit there and put a lot of money against Charles Oliveira, you're taking your life in your hands a little bit.
They don't know everything, Fitzy. They like to bet big money. You just you know. Guy TK, everybody, we take the bets. Last one for me, sir. What's it like you talked about dropping the kid off at school and we got a home game. What's it like when there's a big event like this and you got dad duties, you got other responsibilities in between? Explain to a little bit of the people, everybody's like, oh, you guys are just hanging out. You're doing all this other stuff. No, I got to get home and get my kid fed. Make sure they eat dinner too. I can't just go to the weigh-ins and hang out.
I know. It is a challenge. I'm not calling play-by-play for this. So I have not had to. I've had to call play-by-play for Vegas events. Obviously, the Apex one.
Yeah.
A bit, and I'll tell you, it was an adjustment. Pandemic that forced us into that, where I'm unloading the dishwasher and then I'll be on ESPN later that day. When you go to Tampa and I got an empty hotel room, I'll tell you the fight prep is efficient when I go on the road now. But so it is very different in that regard. I do think that if I were to ever call a big event at T-Mobile Arena for play-by-play, I think I would get a hotel room the night before.
Oh, smart.
I don't, maybe even Thursday, just to get zoned in on an event this big. With the Apex, it feels comfortable now. We've done it so many times, but it was an adjustment. I remember the only events I called in Las Vegas before the pandemic were the Ultimate Fighter finales, where we go to the Palms or somewhere like that. And I remember it was very weird that day. I'm usually I'm going for a walk around whatever host city we're in, talking to fighters in lobbies. You get a lot more interpersonal contact with coaches, fighters, managers, all that sort of thing, where you can pick up a lot of information, and you just don't get that when you're at home doing that. So it's a bit different. I have folded laundry and then gone to the Apex to call fights on ESPN, which is just part of how life is now. But you just got to treat it honestly. I've borrowed from other sports, like the Golden Knights play-by-play announcer lives in Vegas, right? He's got real life to deal with and comes to the rink. Everybody who covers their sports, that from a team perspective, baseball writers, they got to get their kids to school and then go to Fenway Park for batting practice later that day. So it's that's the part of the business they don't tell you about when you're in college. They're like, listen, it's going to be tougher than you think, but they never say, because you got 2 kids at home that have needs and a wife and all of the other things surrounding it. Right. But it's part of it, but we get through it, as you guys do. Everyone's got their stuff.
That's it.
We'll get you out here on this. Practice is starting behind you inside T-Mobile
we got
Arena.
The Minnesota Wild live on Fox.
Nice.
The book. It's great. I know it's a little blurry on my screen, but
it's all
they're
good.
They're out there.
So you mentioned broadcasting in home games, but you had something that happened in Mexico that had the whole broadcasting and the whole entire UFC world really concerned, because sometimes you go down there and you pick up something you're not supposed to. You had your Jordan flu game. You had to broadcast sick.
Yeah, had the flu game in February. Like, Mexico's been – I like going to Mexico, so it's weird, but something always happens. I went under the table in 2019, and then this time I, had what it was, and I feel bad for Mexico, because for a few weeks I blamed it on, like, the food. I ate something bad, the water, something like that. It was the virus. It was the norovirus that's ripping through everybody. I found that out weeks later when my family got it, like a couple weeks ago, and it ripped through my whole house, but I was fine. And Dave, back to your previous question, I was going to call the Rose Namajunas Amanda Hebos fight that week, and like Wednesday, I'm dealing with sick kids and wife at home. I had to go to the ER one time for the baby. He thankfully was okay. My other son's staying home from school on Friday. I was late to the weigh-ins on Friday by 3 minutes because we had a messy situation at home. I'll leave it at that. And I was like, I know that. So I texted everybody that involved. I said, listen, I know the weigh-in window is not going to wait for me to start calling names to the scale. So I'm going to get there as soon as I can, but I'll probably be a few minutes late. So there was a few fighters that took the scale, and then I got there, and right after weigh-ins had to go home for more cleanup, and did most of my prep at night, pulled a little cram night session. So yeah, but I'm okay now, which is good. And Mexico was still fun, and I can't wait to go back and see what it throws at me next time.
All right, where can folks watch you? What are you doing for the next couple of days for UFC 300 on ESPN, ESPN Plus?
So what are we at? 1 to 2 today. So 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. We're live on, I can't remember. It'll definitely be on ESPN Plus. I don't know what linear channel we're on, if it's on ESPN or ESPN2. But we're doing the Road to UFC 300 show, where we kind of celebrate what the UFC has been to this point, and then also preview the big fights on the card coming up. We'll be live on Toshiba Plaza in front of T-Mobile Arena, and I'll be with Chael Sonnen and Anthony Smith. So that's just in a couple hours. There's a lot more programming today. There's a press conference coming up over at MGM Grand Arena. You can catch that on YouTube, and I think E+ will have that. Tomorrow, weigh-ins in the morning. There'll be weigh-ins in the afternoon. And then Saturday, I'm excited, we'll do a pre-show leading into the broadcast. So first fight's at 3, or we come on the air at 3, from 2 to 3 on YouTube in front of any paywall. I'll be out there with Bisping, Chael Sonnen, and Anthony Smith. We'll be on the concourse. Fans will be coming in. They'll be rowdy. I'm going to try my best Pat McAfee impression, Dave, Western PA guy, get the crowd as hyped as I can without getting canceled. And, and then we'll be doing the post show out on the plaza after. So no matter where you look, UFC 300 is going to be. You can always tell when Dana talks to Stephen A. Smith on a fight week that it's a big deal. So you won't have to search hard for UFC 300 coverage.
Brendan, thank you for the time, man. Appreciate it. Hope to see you Saturday. Appreciate it.
See you again.
Good to chat with you, Matt. Dave, nice to meet you. We'll
you
talk
as well.
Again soon.
Absolutely. That one, Mr.